no runway. And if you woke up tomorrow morning and decided to leave, you might have to wait weeks. In the middle of the South Atlantic, thousands of kilometers from the nearest cities, there's an island so small that on a map you could miss it in the blink of an eye. Its name is Tristan da Cunha. About 240 people live here. Almost all of them share just one of 7 surnames. Behind the only village stands a volcano that's still active. Ahead lies thousands of kilometers of ocean. No planes, no highways, only ships that take nearly a week to reach the mainland. Sounds like a place no one would want to be stranded. But here's the strange part. The people of Tristan almost never need to lock their doors. Crime is so rare that for years the entire island only needed one police officer. In a place with almost nowhere to run, people simply don't have much to run from. But the strangest story isn't even that one, because these people once had the chance to leave. After a disaster, the whole community was evacuated to England, a place with hospitals, cars, shops, electricity, and all the comforts their island couldn't offer them. And then, they went back to the island with no airport, back beneath the volcano that had once forced them to flee, back to a place with almost no way out. Why? To understand the answer, we first need to understand just how far Tristan da Cunha really is from the rest of the world. Part 1. A tiny dot in the ocean. Take a look at a map of the South Atlantic, then try to find Tristan da Cunha. You'll understand the problem right away. The nearest inhabited land is St. Helena, about 400 kilometers away. Cape Town, the nearest major city, is roughly 800 kilometers away. South America is even farther. Around Tristan, there's really only one thing: water, no airport. To get here, you have to take a ship from Cape Town, and the journey usually takes about 6 days. But even then, you can't just open an app and buy a ticket. Visitors need permission to come to the island, need to find a spot on the ship, and then have to hope the ocean cooperates. Because if the weather turns bad, the entire trip can change. The whole population is gathered in a single settlement with a name that sounds like it stepped out of a maritime novel, Edinburgh of the Seven Seas. And here's a detail I really love. One of the most remote communities on the planet still has its own postal code. You can order something online here, just don't expect it to arrive tomorrow. But the distance becomes far more frightening when what you're waiting for isn't a package. Imagine falling seriously ill in the middle of the night. No rescue helicopter, no flight the next morning. The nearest mainland is still days away by sea. And from that moment, you start to understand, on Tristan, distance isn't just something on a map. It shapes how people live. Part 2. The Lawless Island. There's a rumor that makes Tristan sound irresistible on the internet. This place has no law, no government, no police. A community completely free out in the ocean. Sounds amazing. There's just one problem: it's not true. Tristan da Cunha is a British overseas territory. The island has a constitution, an administrator, and a council elected by local residents. Law does exist here. What's unusual is they barely have any crime to deal with. For years, the entire community only needed one police officer, and most of the work even involved administration and customs more than chasing criminals. There was once a stretch of over 2 decades without a single recorded arrest. Many people don't lock their doors. And the reason might lie in what seems like Tristan's biggest disadvantage: there's nowhere to disappear to. You can't cause trouble and then blend into a crowd. You can't drive to another city. There's no border to cross. Here everyone knows you, knows your parents, knows your siblings, maybe even knows your grandparents. Isolation makes Tristan feel like a cage. But strangely enough, that very cage is what makes people feel safe. And to understand why they're so isolated, you only need to look up behind the village. Part 3. The mountain that decides everything. Tristan isn't really an island with a mountain on it. It's almost entirely a mountain itself, a massive volcanic cone rising straight up from the floor of the Atlantic. At its center stands Queen Mary's Peak, roughly 262 meters high. In winter, snow can cover its summit, but the real problem lies below. The island's slopes are so steep that almost the entire population can only live on one relatively flat shelf of land in the northwest, and that's where Edinburgh of the Seven Seas exists. No road circles the island, no sprawling suburbs stretch out. The mountain decided where people were allowed to live, and it left them only a very small patch of ground. Then there's the wind. South Atlantic winds slam straight into Tristan after traveling thousands of kilometers with almost nothing to slow them down. Large trees struggle to grow. For most of the island's history, even wood was a precious resource that had to be shipped in. But the people learned to live at the foot of that mountain. They grew potatoes, built homes, raised families, and slowly came to see the mountain behind them as just another part of life. Until one day, it woke up. But before we get to the night that forced the entire island to flee, there's something else worth understanding first. These 240 people are actually far more closely connected to one another than you might think. Part 4-7. Surnames. Open the phone directory of Tristan da Cunha. You'll start seeing the same names repeat. Glass, Green, Hagen, Lavarello, Repetto, Rogers, Swain, 7 surnames. Almost the entire community today descends from a very small group of settlers who came from Europe in the 19th century. Genealogical records on the island date all the way back to 1816. That makes Tristan an extraordinary community for genetic researchers. But isolation has a downside too. When a small population lives separately across many generations, certain genetic traits can become unusually common. A well-known example on Tristan is a high rate of asthma. It's not a curse, not some mystery. Just how genetics works in a small community. But there's another way to look at it. In many places, when people say, "We're like one big family," it's just a figure of speech. On Tristan, it's almost literally true. The shopkeeper, the fisherman, the teacher, the child you pass on the road. Trace the family tree far enough, and those lines are very likely to meet. And perhaps that's why one principle has held on the island for more than 200 years. No one should have much more than anyone else. Part 5. An island not made for getting rich. When William Glass arrived to settle in 1816, a simple principle took shape: everyone must share fairly. More than 2 centuries later, that spirit still holds. Farmland is managed for the benefit of the whole community. Outsiders can't simply show up, buy a nice plot of land, and build a vacation home. Tristan isn't an island waiting for investors. It isn't for sale. Even the number of livestock each family can keep is limited to prevent any one household from using too much of the island's resources. Today, each family is only allowed to keep 1 breeding cow. It sounds extreme, but on a small island with finite resources and no new land to expand into, equality isn't just an ideal, it's a survival strategy. You see it most clearly in the potato fields outside the village. Low stone walls block the wind. Small plots of land, each family tending to its own share. Not flashy, not wealthy, but enough to live on. Still, potatoes aren't what pays Tristan's bills. What does that is crawling along the seafloor, and it has 2 claws. Part 6. An economy with 2 claws. If Tristan ever lost a single species, the entire island's economy could be in trouble. That species is the Tristan rock lobster, commonly known to locals as crawfish. The fishery began in 1949 and gradually became one of the territory's most important sources of income. It's also a fishery managed sustainably and has received international certification. But what's interesting isn't just the lobster itself. It's the way the whole island works around it. When fishing season arrives and the processing factory starts running, job boundaries almost disappear. The electrician might show up at the factory. People doing other jobs pitch in too. The whole community shifts its rhythm together. The lobsters are processed, packaged, then travel thousands of kilometers across the ocean to international markets. Somewhere, someday, a person might be sitting in an upscale restaurant in America, with no idea at all that the dish in front of them began its journey in a village of 240 people in the middle of the Atlantic. Besides lobster, Tristan also earns money from something much smaller: collectible stamps and coins. Because it turns out, a stamp from the ends of the earth has a value all its own. But money only tells part of the story. To truly understand Tristan, try living here for a single day. Part 7. A day at the end of the world. Need to buy something. There's one shop, just one. And what's on the shelves depends heavily on whatever just came off the last ship. The ship arrives, the shelves fill up, then day by day they empty out. If something runs out, you wait. That's a skill the modern world is slowly forgetting: waiting. So the people of Tristan still rely heavily on what the island itself can provide. Potatoes grown in volcanic soil, fish, lobster, vegetables, simple family meals that have carried on for generations. And when the workday ends, everyone gathers again in a few familiar places: the church, the school, the factory, and the Albatross Bar, the island's pub. In a big city, you might walk into a bar and not know a single person there. Here, try doing the opposite. Life moves slowly, news travels fast, and everyone's schedule isn't just set by Monday or Friday, but by the weather, the fishing season, and the day a ship appears on the horizon. That way of life had carried on for generations, until October 1961, when the ground began to crack. Part 8. The night the whole island had to flee. October 9th, 1961. After 145 years of settlement, the volcano woke up. The ground cracked open near the settlement. Lava began pushing up just a few hundred meters from people's homes. No one knew where it would end. All 264 residents had to evacuate, first by small boats, then onto a ship to Cape Town, and finally to England. The lava flow poured down and destroyed the lobster processing factory, the economic heart of the community. To many people outside, Tristan seemed finished, and in truth, the islanders were offered a fairly tempting choice. In England, they had electricity, shops, cars, cinemas, hospitals, a life more convenient in nearly every way. Think about that. You've just fled a volcano on an island with no airport, and now a modern nation is giving you the chance to start over. Would you go back? The Tristanians had to answer that question. After scientists surveyed the island and confirmed it was safe to live on, again the first groups returned, and by the end of 1963, most of the community had chosen to go home. They went back to the houses beneath the mountain that had once driven them out, back to the ocean, back to isolation. This might be the single most important detail for understanding Tristan da Cunha, because they weren't there simply because they had no other option. They once had a choice, and they chose to come back. But that didn't make the island any easier to live on, because sometimes Tristan doesn't even need a volcano to be cut off from the world. All it takes is one strong wind. Part 9. When the ocean shuts the door. Tristan sits in waters that sailors have long called the Roaring Forties. The name says almost everything. Winds can travel thousands of kilometers around the Southern Ocean before slamming straight into the island. Weather here isn't necessarily extreme in the sense of scorching heat or freezing cold. It's unpleasant in a different way. Persistent, damp, cloudy, windy. Rain falls year-round. Even in February, the warmest month temperatures usually hover around just 21 to 22 degrees C. But the real concern lies at sea. When the swells are too big, ships can't dock. Imagine the supply ship has crossed thousands of kilometers and is sitting right out there. You can see it. Your goods are on board. Maybe your mail is too. But the sea says, not today. And the ship has to wait, sometimes for days. In most of the world, bad weather just makes you late. On Tristan, it can close the one door connecting you to the rest of the planet. And if what you need isn't food, but a specialist doctor, then the story becomes far more serious. Part 10. When an emergency is thousands of kilometers from a hospital. Tristan has a hospital. The Camogli Healthcare Center, opened in 2017, is the community's lifeline. Doctors and nurses can handle most everyday issues. But there's one non-negotiable limit. If you need complex surgery or specialized treatment, you may have to go to Cape Town, and there's no plane waiting on standby. That makes healthcare on Tristan a problem very few places in the world ever have to face. What do you do when the patient can't wait, but the ship hasn't arrived yet? In 2026, that question stopped being hypothetical. A serious medical situation put pressure on the hospital's oxygen supply, while the nearest support ship couldn't simply appear on demand. And then something that had never happened before took place. A British military aircraft flew thousands of kilometers into the South Atlantic, but it couldn't land. Tristan has no runway. So, they jumped. 6 paratroopers, along with highly trained medical personnel, were dropped onto the island, carrying more than 3 tons of supplies, including medical oxygen. The landing spot. A 9-hole golf course near the settlement. Picture that scene. A small village in the middle of the ocean. No airport. People looking up at the sky. And help, quite literally, falling from above. That's the other side of this peaceful paradise. No traffic noise, barely any crime, no doors that need locking. But when something truly serious happens, distance can become the most dangerous enemy of all. And strangely enough, that very remoteness is also what creates one of Tristan's greatest treasures. Part 11. A wild world protected by isolation. Seen from the mainland. Tristan looks tiny, but look down into the water, and the story is completely different. In 2020, this community helped protect a marine area of roughly 687,000 km², a massive area compared to the small island where they live. Most of the zone is protected from harmful extractive activities. What's notable is that Tristan depends heavily on the ocean to survive, but they understand one simple thing. If the sea dies, the island has no future either, and these waters are worth protecting. The Tristan Archipelago is an extremely important breeding site for the northern rockhopper penguin. Massive colonies gather on the nearby islands. Then there's the Tristan albatross, and a strange little creature living on Inaccessible Island. The Inaccessible Island rail. The smallest flightless bird in the world. It exists in only one place on the entire planet. Right here. Millions of years of isolation have shaped creatures you can't find anywhere else. And interestingly, isolation has done to nature almost the same thing it's done to the people of Tristan. It made them different. It made them fragile. And precisely because of that, it made them worth protecting. But then, after centuries of living almost cut off from the world finally found a way into Tristan. Not by ship, but by a signal from the sky. Part 12. When the internet reaches the end of the world. For most of Tristan's history, information traveled at the speed of a ship. Then came satellite internet, but the connection was still slow. Then, in 2024, everything changed. Starlink arrived. Connection speeds jumped dramatically, bringing one of the most remote communities on the planet much closer to the online world. For the school, it was a small revolution. students could access far more resources. For the hospital, doctors could now consult with specialists thousands of kilometers away. For families, video calls suddenly made relatives in England or South Africa feel much closer. But technology always takes something away, even as it brings something new. An evening that once meant heading to the Albatross bar simply because there was nowhere else to go, now comes with Netflix, YouTube, video calls, the whole world sitting right there on a screen. One of the most isolated communities on the planet began facing the same question billions of other people already face. When the whole world can enter your room, do you still need to step outside to see your neighbor? For adults, that's a cultural shift. But for Tristan's children, the question runs much deeper. Because the internet doesn't just show them the world, it shows them all the places they could leave for. Part 13. Will the children stay? Tristan has only one school, St. Mary's School. There, a few dozen students study ranging from about 4 to 16 years old. Then, one day, the path of education on the island comes to an end. If they want to study further, many young people have to leave home. England, South Africa, a completely different world lies on the other side of the ocean. And this might be the greatest challenge Tristan has ever faced. Not a volcano, not a storm, not a shortage of food, but whether the next generation will want to stay. The community has just over 200 people. Outsiders can't simply move here, buy a house, and become residents. That means Tristan's future depends heavily on the children growing up on the island today. The internet might help them stay. A teenager can now learn things that once could only be learned by leaving the island. But that same connection also opens a window into London, Cape Town, New York, or almost anywhere else in the world. Every night, right there on their phone. Does that make them love their home more? Or does it start making a 37-square-mile island feel too small? No one knows. And perhaps the answer will decide whether Tristan da Cunha continues to exist as a living, breathing community for another century, or slowly becomes a place where descendants only return to visit.